So, guys, is my screen visible?
Yes,
Okay. So, what we will do is we'll create a real-time chat application. Okay. And it will have a front-facing client and a server. Okay. So, let's create the folders first. So, we can create a client and we can create another folder that is for server, that is for backend. You can like, it's up to you. You can do it however you want. And we can also have some kind of doc section, so if you want to have some documentation related to it or some features or whatever that you want to build, you can do that, right? So we need to start with the backend, right? So backend, we should know how to structure the folder, right? So I will create some folders. We will discuss it along the way while we do that, right? While we develop. So basically, we would require some sort of controllers. I'll come to that part, right? Like what are they? Then middlewares. Then we can have some kind of models. And now we will be using guys database, right? So that would be MongoDB. So we will use that, okay? So we can create a separate folder for MongoDB. Again, this is not a hard structure. You can change it however you want. You can follow the other structures as well. This is one of the way that you can uh, design your folder structure. So these will be common in every uh, project that you create, right? So we'll have routes, we will have connection, middlewares, controllers, models. So these would be common. Okay, and if you have want to have anything, then you can have some utils, right? And what else we want to do is we can go to the terminal, and inside the terminal, let's go to the server. And here we want to start with a project, right? So to start with the project, the very first thing that we do is we install those package.jsons and everything, right? So what we can do is we can go and we can just say npm init dash y. So this will install the basic project setup for us, and you can see it has created a package.json where the name of our project is server, that we can change, right? And the main entry point is index.js file. So we have to create a file that, let's say, index.js. So this would be the entry point of our project, right? Because that is what it's mentioned here. If you change it to main.js, then you can easily change. And this we have seen in that Node CLI project also, right? Okay. So this much part is clear, right, everyone?
yes,
Okay. So, what we want to do, guys, is we want to create APIs, right? So we have a Express JS framework for that, right? So what we can do is we can install. So let's go and let's say npm install Express. So this is a standardized library for building APIs or backend in Node.js, right? And you can go to the documentation also. It's widely used and it's kind of a standard. So we will use this. We will use couple of more packages that again I'll tell you along the way. So we can start installing them, right? So we can install bcrypt.js. It will be used for authentication or hashing. Then we can use some cookie parser library. We can use course. We will use .env, right? We will use JSON web token, and we can use mongoose, then nodemon, and then socket.io. So each of the libraries have their own use cases, right? For example, this is for APIs, this is for parsing the cookie, this is for encryption, this is for allowing domains to make a request to our backend, this is for loading environment variables, this is for authentication, this is to talk to MongoDB. Then nodebond is for live, like whenever we save, it will restart the server. And then we have the socket.io, this is for real-time chat, right? So as and when we will use, it will make more sense, but these are the libraries that we can install in the start, or you can install it as you are implementing things, right? So let me share this command. So let's install it. It will all come in the node modules, and the dependencies will be listed here in the package.json. So bcrypt is not there. Is it like this? Yeah, so you can try. And socket.io. Okay, cool. So it has been installed, and we can see in the node modules, all the code has been installed. And in the dependencies, we have all these things, right, that we can use, and their versions, right? Now, very first thing is to create a basic API. So to test that everything is working, right? So for that, we can go to our index.js and we can import the Express library. And these things are pretty simple, guys. You can go to documentation and you will directly get the syntax. You don't need to remember it, right? And this syntax will not work because, let me try node index.js, because you can see it gives this parsing the common JS module, because this is not common JS. Common JS is when we use require, when we say const express to be require, right? So this would work, but this will not work because we have to do two things. Either you can say index.mjs, that tells the browser, okay, that tells the node, okay, that now we will use latest ES modules. Or the other way that we did in the previous project was to add a type, and the type we can give is module. So common JS is inbuilt, we can say module. So this will allow us to import express, and I think now you see no error, so it works. And you can go to the express, you can check this, right? So you will directly get this, right? So you can do that, it's fine. You can copy paste, but let's do it like this. So we import the express and we create an app out of it. So we will get an app object from this. And just to test it out, what we can do is, see, if you want to create a get API, right? So we can just say app dot get. You can mention the route. So we can say, let's say test, and then this is the syntax, guys. So this is a callback. So whenever a request comes to this endpoint, this callback will run. So that is the idea of callbacks, right? And we will have a request and response. So user will request something and pass something in the request, and the server will send the response, right? So for now, we can just say response.json, and let's say message to be server is running. And if you want to send something else, if this is an object, so we can say timestamp. Let's say new date, something like this. Yeah, this is fine. And another thing that we do is, okay, this is fine. User will make a request to this, right? Endpoint. But then what will be the path, right? What will be the server or the port that you open that the request will come to? So for that, we can say const server, and we can say app.listen. So we will listen to that port. Okay. So port can be, we can like put it directly here now for now. Or we can put in the env, right? So that's fine, or environment variable. So we can say app.listen to, let's say, 8000 port, and we can say, or maybe for now let's use a variable, and this variable makes sense because if you are using it for multiple times, then you just have to change at one place. So we can say app.listen to port, and again the callback will run. So once it's running, we can just tell that console.log server listening on port, and let's mention the port here. Okay. And yeah, that's it. So now if I say node index.js, we get this app.length. It's not app.length, it's a get request. So we can say app.get, right? So yeah, so server is running, guys. That's great. And we can go to the local host 8000, and nothing comes here. But when we say 8000 slash test, so that test is the after path from the base path, right? Now you can see it's saying message and the timestamp. So it is as easy as creating a API, guys, right? Just like 4 5 lines of code. So this part is clear. Now again, guys, this 4 5 lines of code behind the scenes is doing a lot of things that we know. It's talking to the libuv library, the C++ code, then that is called that is talking to the network tab, that is opening the ports, right? Here we are directly getting the response. We are sending the response as an object, but you know, right, the data comes in the form of data packets. So all those things, conversions, everything, parsing is done internally, right? So we just write 4 5 lines of code and we have a server up and running. Is this clear? Any questions here? Anyone? Let me know. Pooja, Akshay, Manazir, Siddesh. We can always write a server. We can start a server at any port like this. Guys, this is clear. Shall we proceed?
Yes.
Okay. Others also?
Yes.
Okay, great. So the server part is pretty sorted, right? We have to create the APIs as on the business requirements, but this part is sorted now. Now the second thing that we need to work on, or maybe what we can do is, uh, we can what we can do, so we have to have a database also, right? So we have done the API connection part, and just one more thing that we can do is we have the nodemon library installed, right? So to use the nodemon library, we can go to the package.json, and here we can say write another script. Let's say start script, and that would run nodemon index.js. So this is the entry point of our file, and now what will happen? Earlier, if this is not there, right? If this is not there, then let's say the server is started and we are making any change, server is running, let's put something, right? So we go here, we refresh, we do not get anything, right? It's not updating. So what we have to do is always whenever we make a change, you have to close this, restart it, and then do that, right? Now it works. So what we can do is we can install this script, and now if I go here, I change anything, let's say I remove that, it will automatically, it should restart, right? So now I can say start with, let's say, npm start, because that is the script that we have written. Now it is starting using nodemon, and if I change it, you will see it will restart. So it will restart, the changes will reflect then and there. So that is why we are using this nodemon. Okay, now one more thing that we have to do is we have to do our connection setup to the MongoDB. Okay, so how do we do that? So everyone, guys, we have to create this sort of uh, account, right? It's a free account. So let's go to the MongoDB Atlas. So it's a cloud version of MongoDB, and we can go here. You can say sign in or get started. Because I already have the account, I'll say sign in. Okay, so I'll log in with Google. So you guys also can do the sign up. There's no charge for it. So guys, here you will get some sort of options, right? A dashboard. So we can create a new project, and let's call it as real time, something like that. You can give any name, right? And if you want, you can add some tags, but let's create next. So guys, ensure that you note this part very carefully, or are you guys doing with me? If you're doing with me, then it's better, right? So if you guys are doing it with me, let me know where you are stuck, right? But this is important step to start with the MongoDB part. So we are creating a project. Let's click on next. And currently I am the project owner. So that is fine. If you want to have new accounts, you can do that. So we can just click on create project. So now you have the MongoDB app project, whatever we have created, and this is something that you will get. So here we have to create a cluster, right? So this cluster will be used for storing our data for everything, right? So we have to choose our client provider, region, and all these things. So we can go to create, and you can choose anything, and select the free one, guys. Don't pay, don't put any card. You go for free. We have this much storage and this much RAM is shared and the CPU is shared. Okay. So that is fine. This is for learning and exploring MongoDB. And if you want, you can do a quick setup. You can preload sample data set. You don't want to do that, you can change the name of the cluster. Let me put it then and like this only, and you can choose any provider. You can choose Google Cloud, Azure, AWS, whatever, and choose the recommended region. That is for me Mumbai. That is fine. And we can go and we can click on create deployment. Okay, now you do that. When you do that, you see that okay, I had a connection IP address. So IP address has been added for local connectivity, and then we have to create a database user, and we have to have this particular username and password stored somewhere, guys. So sometimes you will not get this password, so we'll have to regenerate it, right? So it's better to store it somewhere in a password vault or anything, right? So copy that, and then what we can do is we can choose the connection method. So we can go to the connection method, like how we will uh, connect it with our application. But before that, we will create the database user. Okay, so the database user has been added, and we can go to the connection method. And here we have multiple ways of connecting our application to this MongoDB, right? And you can see there is Compass, there is Shell, MongoDB for VS Code. You can directly do that. Then there is SQL, right? You can use it for data analysis and visualization. Then you can, this is the latest one for MCP, right? If you want to do in Cursor, Claude, all these things. Okay, so this is one thing. So we will go to driver, and this is fine. The driver would be Node.js 6.7 or later. So we have to install this driver. Okay, so we can go here, and in the project we can say, let's open the terminal. Let's say cd server, and we can say npm install MongoDB. So the driver has been added. And how do we connect it, guys? So we connect it with this connection string. So we have to copy that. So you can do show password, and so don't share the password with anyone, but you can copy it, and we can create a env file, and we can put something like mongo db URL or whatever, and we can assign it to this URL. So it contains my user, it contains my password, and this is what we will use to connect. I think most of the setup is done, and we can just connect it. So this part is clear, everyone. Any questions here? It is just the initial time setup for every project that you do, right? And you can connect it with multiple ways. Okay, guys, this part is clear, right? You have to create your account and you have to follow all these steps. Okay, let me know if you have any questions, right? So we can click on done, and you can also go to the resources if you want. So we can click on done, and now we need to actually connect it to our application. Okay, so that's why we created this MongoDB, and we can have a file. Let's call it as connection.js. And what we will do here is we will use Mongoose because Mongoose helps us to write the MongoDB syntax in JavaScript. So we can search for Mongoose library, and you can see that it's a ODM, that is Object Data Mapper, and it will allow us to do multiple things, right? The business logic, everything. It reduces the boilerplate code. It gives us, we can write the syntax in JavaScript, right? So we will use this for the correction. Excuse me. So what we can do is we can go here and we can import it. So we can say import mongoose, and we can create a function. Let's say MongoDB connect, and we can have a try and catch. So we can say mongoose dot connect, and we will pass the URL. So this URL is here, right? So we can copy this, and how to get it, guys, from the environment variable. If in the last project you remember, we get it through process. So we can say process dot env dot mongodb URL. It will not come as of now because there is one more thing that we need to do. But let's do console.log, and we can just say MongoDB connected. And if there is any error, we can say MongoDB connection. And we can export this MongoDB connect function, and we can do the default export as well. Okay, so this is the thing that we have written, and we can go to our index.js file, and we can just say MongoDB connect. So ensure that you import it correctly, and we can call this function. And I think in the server it's giving the error. Okay, so the error that we are getting, guys, is that the URI parameter that we have passed is undefined. It must be a string. So that means this connection, this we are passing, right? So it's not getting. Why? Because it's not able to access it directly. So to access it, what we have to do is we have to install another package. And so we can go here and we can say npm i.env. So it will take up all the environment variables, and it will put it into the process object. So now what we can do is we can go and we can just say on top in our index.js, we can just say import dot env from dot env. That's it. And I think now it should work. So we have to start it again because it has been crashed. And what is the issue? Same issue, right? Again, we are getting undefined. Is it not saved? Let's try that again. Okay. So we are loading it like this. That is fine. Okay. So my bad. We will have to load it from the config. Let's try again. And now it works, right? So we have the MongoDB connected. So the connection has been established successfully. So that means the structure and all these things are working fine. Now, one more thing we can do is, since we were having this, right, so port, so we can say process.env dot port or 8000 by default, right? So you can change the port as well. You can give it any port, right? So now if I do that, it will start on port 5000. Okay. And if the port is not available, by default, it will take 8000. So all these things you can do. And our MongoDB connection is also successful. So any questions here? Guys, this is clear, everyone? Let me know so that we'll proceed. Okay. I'm audible, right? Pooja, Akshay, Benazir, Siddesh.
Yeah, we are good to go.
Okay. All right. So what we can do is, yeah. So we have a structure, guys, right? We have this controllers, we have this models, we have all this structure that we have, right? So before that, I would say what we can do is either we can have the URLs directly like this, the path, and we can write the logic here. But the logic will not be as simple, right? So that's why we have the concept of controllers, middlewares, and routes. So here, what we will do is here we will say that, okay, we can say app dot use, and we will say that a base route that we want for this case is to be just slash, and the slash is after localhost and whatever the port is. And if the user comes to this route, then we will create our user routes. What is this user route? So we have to create that. Similarly, we can say for messages. So if the user comes to slash API slash message, then we will take them to the message routes because there will be couple of routes. for messages, right? The CRUD operations. And similarly, we can say slash API slash chat. So we'll take them to the chat routes. So let's focus on, I would say, the user route first because that is very, very important. And since the name suggests user routes, guys, where it will be, in which folder it will be. It will be inside routes, right? So in the routes, we can create 3 files for user, for message, and for chat. So we are currently focusing on the user. So what we can do here is we can go on top and we can say import express from express. And why we are doing is because we want the router now from this express. So in the backend also we have routes. And why do we need routes, guys? Because now you will see that. So the main path is slash. Now we can continue with that path here. So we can say what all we want, right? So the user will log in. So login will be what kind of request, guys? It will be a post request. So we can say post, and the API we can say slash auth slash login, right? And then we can write our logic here in the callback. Similarly, router dot post logout, right? So these things should be there, and maybe there will be more user APIs, right? Like let's say API slash user, users ID, users update, all those things, right? But for now, let's work with these two things. So this is our routes, and then we export it. So export default router. So that is the pattern why we have used this type of code, guys, because you can see when a person looks at it, it becomes readable. Okay, that app.use is taking this as the base API, then it is going to the user routes, that is in user.js, and that slash, that's auth slash login is the login API, it's a logout API. So the section of APIs are isolated. Now again, the logic view that you will write here is tricky, right? So for now, let's leave it. For now, let's complete this. So we have said export default route. We can go to the index.js, and on the top, we can say import user routes from routes slash user.js. So in turn, it will go to user routes. In turn, this will be our API. This will be our route. User will come to this, and some code will work. When user will log in, like come to this API, this code will run. So that's why we have controllers. So route is only for route. Controllers is the actual logic. So we are not writing the logic here. It's just a callback, right? So it's better that we define this callback in the controllers. So we can say, okay, so whenever this will come, right? And one more thing we can do is we can build another API. So for now, let's say login, and this we can say logout. And before that, we can have a register. So we have to register the user. And for that, we will have a register function. So where this function will come from? This function will come from the controllers now. So we can go to the controllers, and in the controllers, we can say user controllers.js, and same we will do for others as well, right? So we can say chat, and we can say message controllers. So we are only working with user controllers. Now here is where we will write our actual logic. So we can say export const register. This is normal callback function. You can put it async because we'll talk to the API, to the backend. But for now, let's say request and response. And similarly, we can do for login. And that's it. So we can go to our routes where we are calling the controller. And on top of that, we can just import it. So we can say register, and we can say login. So ultimately, these are the APIs, and the logic part is written here. So you can see we do not have any error. That means nothing is breaking. So this is how we are structuring the application. So whenever the code becomes larger and larger, we are abstracting it out. So any questions here? Okay. So tell me one thing, guys. What is the first thing that we should build? What will the user do first if you want to test it out?
Login functionality.
No, first user will register, right?
Yeah.
So registering is important. And so, guys, what we have is we have validations, and validations is across all the application part, right? So let's say we have our front end. So in front end, do we do the validations or not? Backend, or you can say APIs. So we do some kind of form validation here, so that user passes the correct data. Then we do some kind of validation on the backend, so that we expect the exact data that we want, right? Then we do some kind of validation in database, and that is called as models, because we have to be very much sure, guys, that we are not taking any other data and storing it, right? So that is important. We should not be taking any sort of data and then saving it in the database. That is a bad practice, right? So we have to be validating across. So we create schemas. So that's why we created models folder here. So inside this, again, we can create models, and it is nothing but the schema that you want to save in the database. So we can say user model.js. Similarly, we can say chat, and similarly we can say message. And inside the user model, again, we will use mongoose. So we can say import mongoose from mongoose. And how to create a schema, guys? So we can say const user schema. This is just a variable. And to create a schema, we can say mongoose. dot schema, and inside this we can pass whatever we want to have. So you guys have to plan it, right? So it will be an object. Inside that, we what do we want? So when we are registering the user or logging in, right, we want to have the name because it's a chat application. We want to have email. We want to have password, again depending on your use case, business case, right? And we also want to have some kind of bio, that the person is available or not available. Then if you want, you can have some kind of profile pic, and maybe contacts, that would be multiple contacts, and some timestamps. Okay, why timestamps? Because you should know when the user has message, when the message was received, all sorts of things, right? So you can just go here. We can just say that, okay, we want name. Now name should have a couple of properties. So we can put object here. So we can say the type of the name that we want it to receive. Otherwise, it will give an error. Okay. So this is the schema that we are building. And we can say required. Yes, the name is required. Without name, we will not allow the user to onboard the application. Same for email. Same for password. And then we have bio. So bio will also be a string, but it's not required. So we can say default of that person to be available. So default it will be available. Then we can have a profile pic, that will also be a string. And if you want to have, if the user is not providing, right, and you want to have some sort of default URL, you can use that. Okay. So it will show some kind of avatar. It's up to you. And then we can have the contacts. Now it will be multiple contacts, guys, right? And it will be an array. So I'll say array, and each of them would be an object, and the type of that should be mongoose. This is important. Mongoose dot schema dot types dot, so it's a mongoose type object ID. So this is something, the ID that we will see, that MongoDB generates automatically whenever a record is created in the backend. So this context will also be different users, right? So we are saying the type of the contact will be the same as the MongoDB object ID. So it will validate, and the reference to the document or the table. We don't say table here, we say document. Would be user. So this is the document. This is the document that we are creating for user, right? So it will take the reference of the users table, because the context will be also be the users of the application. So this is just creating a linkage between the contacts and the user. And then finally, we can say timestamps, and we can say that to true. So our schema is ready now. And what we can do is we can say const user model to be mongoose dot model, and we can say user. So this is the user that it's referring to, and we can pass the schema that we have created. So finally we get a model, and we can just say export default user model. Okay. So we have successfully created the model, and next what we want to do is we can go to our controller section, And the first thing that we want to do is, guys, we want to go to register, right? Because that is what the user will do first. Whenever user will come on the application, user will do the register, right? So tell me one thing, user is registering, so where will the data come from? User will type where? On the front end, right? So where will the details be put, guys? How do you extract those details? So we have two things, request and response. So where should the data be coming from? So it's a request response cycle, right? The user will send a request to the backend and he'll get a response, right? So we should get the data here from the response, and we get it ideally from the from the request, and we get ideally from the request body. So we can destructure. Let's say the user is passing the first name, the last name, the email, and the password for registration, and we can say request dot body. And for now, let's also say console.log request body to be request dot body. So let's test it out. And how to test, guys? So we can use basically Postman for that, or any other API tool. So I would say you can use Bruno. So Bruno is also great, open source. So let us download this. So you guys can also download, guys, right? It's better than Postman for testing, and it's fully offline. Okay, so let me install that. Okay, great. So we have a sample API collection as well, where we have get users and all these things, right? And you can test it out. It works. So basically, what we have is we have a register endpoint, and this is a post. So we can create a new collection Let's call it as like this. We can have, okay, inside this, we can have users. Inside this, we can have any request. It's HTTP request, and it would be post, and it will be, I think, localhost 5000. So the server is not running, or what? And we can say register. Similarly, we can say test request. Let's try it out. We can make a request from here, and we are not getting anything, guys, because what is happening? Let's remove the port. Now it's on 8000. Okay, 8000 is working, right? So this is how we test. Cool. So we are in the register part, and the endpoint is basically what? You can go to the routes and you can check the endpoint. So the endpoint is /auth/register. Okay. And let's make a request. So when we make a request, post request, we have to pass couple of things, guys, right? So we have to pass what? We have to pass these things because these are mandatory. Okay. So this is a valid JSON, and what we can do now is we can make a request. We are getting nothing because we are returning nothing, and we are also not seeing anything on the console here. So let's save that. Let's try that again. So nothing. Let's just say that we send back something like that just to test. 8000. Okay, it should be 8000. Yeah, so we are making a request and we got this error, guys. And this error should also populate here. So, can anyone tell me what is the meaning of this, guys? Error. What do you understand by this error? Guys, are you there? What do you understand by this error? Pooja, Akshay, Siddesh, Benazir, Raksha. So basically, the thing is right that this is undefined, right? The body is undefined, right? That's why we are not able to extract these things. So that is what I told you guys. See, directly you do not get a request and response object to work with, right? So there are a lot of things internally that happens. So one more thing that we will do is we will use a simple code, right? So that simple code we will use on top. Let's say here, and you will say app. These are middlewares. When we say app dot use, and I'll say express dot json. So these are middlewares. So whenever it goes to the API, before that, this part is running, right? So this part will parse the data and put it in the form of object for us to use in our controllers. So now we can go. We can do the same thing. We can say next, and now you see we get the message back and we get the details here because this is what that express.json is doing, right? So that one line is important and you have to add it every time when you are creating a new project, and then you have to forget about it. So yeah, we have these things available with us. So what we will do, guys, so we have the data now, right? And since we are talking to a database, let's make that async. And what we will do is we will add a try catch, and we just have to check first if the email already exists in the MongoDB. How do we do that? So we can say const existing user, and we can just say await. Now, how do we get to that record to the user's document? So we have created a model, right? Model, and that's what we'll do. We'll say import user from dot slash models slash user model dot js. So what we'll do is we'll say, okay, go to that user model, and it is as easy as writing this mongoose syntax, right? Find one, find one record where the email is equal to the email that we are passing, because email would be unique, right? So you have to add that unique key as well. And we can say here if existing user, then we don't register, right? So we'll say return response dot status, and we can say 400. It's a bad request, and we can say uh, error. We can say send a JSON object. We can say error, and we can have error message. User already exists, right? So currently we are creating a user first time. So this is just a extra record, right? Otherwise, we'll say const full name to be first name, and then we can add the last name, and we can say const new user to be, we can say new user. So it will create a new user record, and we will pass the email, the password, the name as full name to the MongoDB record, right? And then we can say something like, so I think what we can do now is, yeah, we can just say new user dot save. So it will save the new user in the record. Okay. So that's fine. And after that, we can just say await because it's talking to the MongoDB, right? Database external. And we can say response.json to be, we can send the message to be success. And yeah, if you want to send token, that we'll do later on. So this is fine. So for now, let's test up till here. So we are getting the full name, we are passing email, password, all these things. Let's say, and we get the message as success, right? So we can go to our MongoDB. We can go to we can refresh it, and we can go to browse collections. And this should show the collection that we created, the schema, and we get the record here. So I told you, right, this object ID is something that MongoDB automatically creates. So it has created this object ID for this record, where in the database we have name, email, password, bio stored, because that we had default, and the created and updated ID is taken automatically by it because we set timestamps to true. The context is empty array because we have not put any context, right? So we are just registering the user, and initially the user will have zero contacts. So is this part clear, guys? Is this making sense, everyone? So now our database contains the first record. Anything you guys want me to repeat? Akshay, Siddesh, Raksha, Benazir, Pooja. Guys, making sense this part? Guys, am I audible or not? Yeah, okay. Akshay is saying clear. It's 9:31. Guys, are you there? Am I audible? Or all of you have gone doing some other work? Okay, so let's continue then. So this is how we would create the register part, and if there is anything that would fail, right? So we can just log, and we can say error in registering user, and we can pass in the error. Okay, now if we try to register the same request, it will go to that if condition. It will not register again. It will say user already exists, right? And yeah, these are the headers. These are the timelines that these many requests that we have put. Okay, and this is how we test the API. So you can write your test cases, asserts, scripts, whatever you want, but this is how we test, and this is the post request, so we are passing the body. Okay, so yeah, so guys, I have a very important question, like should we store the password like this or not? What do you think?
We shouldn't store it actually. I think we can use bycrypt for it.
Yeah, so we will store it, but we will not store it directly, right? Because this database will have some user, right? And if the database user has the passwords, then anything bad can happen, right? So let me delete this record. So what we'll do now, we'll go to our user model. We will keep the logic separate, and we can use some middlewares. So before creating the user model, I would say user schema, and I would say dot methods. So we can have our own custom methods here, and we will say generate. Okay, so this is one thing. So we'll say generate auth token, and one more thing is authentication token, because every time user will not the pa- you will not user will not pass the password, right? User will then use the APIs. So we have to authenticate internally. The other thing that we can do is before saving. So this is the custom one, and then we can say user schema dot pre. So pre means before save. Before save happens, what do we want? So we can have a async function, and we can pass next here. Next means you can move on to the next middleware, or if there is no middleware, it will move to the API call. Okay. So what we can do is inside this function, right? And one more important thing, we will have to use a function keyword here. Why? Because we will be using this keyword. Okay. And what we'll see is we'll say if this dot is modified, this is internally the MongoDB syntax. So we'll say if the password field has been modified, right? Then we can say this dot password, and we can say import bcrypt from bcrypt.js, and we will use this library and we will hash the password. So we'll say this dot password to be await, and we can say bcrypt dot hash, and we can pass the password, and we can pass the salt round. So you can say 10, 12. So basically salt round means it is generates the hash. Hash can also be decoded, right, by the hackers. But this salt means, so there is a concept of hashing plus salt. So generate a you have a password, you generate a hash using the hashing algorithm, and you add some sort of rounds of unique numbers, or you can say random numbers. So that is 12. So this 12 will add the 12 random numbers for it, right? So this is hashing plus salt. So now when we do this, let us see if this works. This should point to the user model, and then we are registering the model, right? Now when everything is completed, we use this next pattern to move it to the next middleware in the line or to the API itself. So let's test it out, and I can say this. Let's see what happens. So we are getting some issue here that says next is not a function. Okay, let's skip that. Let's try it again. Okay, we get a success, and when we refresh, okay, we got the record again, and inside that now you can see, guys, the password is hash plus salt, and we have to decrypt it. We have to do a couple of things, right? So this is not the password that user has typed. So, and this is how it gets stored in the database, and this should be the proper way, right? So is this part clear? So we are hashing it, salting it. It is done by the backup library, and then we are saving it on the database. So we will never save the direct passwords in the database. Guys, this part is clear?
Yes.
Okay. So let's complete the login part. I will clone this request. Let's say login user. This would be login. And this would only take email and password, because we will not ask the registration request again, right? Registration takes a bunch of things, but we will just do the login using email and password. So we can go to our user controllers. We have login. So what should be the logic here? Again, we are passing the data, email and password. So we'll extract that from the request dot body, and then we can have some error handling. Inside that we can say const valid user. So let's first test if the user is valid or not. How do we do that? Very easy. We can say user dot find one, find that object, find that record where email is equal to the email that is coming from the body, right? But how do we check the password, guys? We have to check if it's a valid password. How do we do that? So we are using bcrypt library for that, right? So we can say const valid password, and we can have a logic here. We can say await bcrypt. So we have to compare, right? So we are getting the user. So this has to be async. So we are getting the user from the database, and this valid user has its own hashed password. So we will say bcrypt.compare, and we will pass both the password. We will say the password that is what the user has typed, and the password that is valid user dot password, right? So it will compare and it will check, and if we do not have a valid password, then we say return response dot status, and we can say 401. 401 means unauthorized, and we can say JSON. We can pass on the error to the user, and we can say invalid credentials. Cool. And now what we can do is we can say response dot status, and we can say status to be 200. Don't need to send two times, but it's fine if you want to do that. And if there is any error, we will say response dot status to be 500, and we can pass on whatever the error that we got from the catch. So let's test this out, and I'll go here. I'll go to this. Let's test the login, and you can see that we are getting the error. Why? Okay, the error we are getting is because we have not imported only the bcrypt library. So these silly mistakes can happen. Let's try that again. Still the same thing. So we have the login, and in the route we are saying login auth slash login. User is something that we have. Okay, so guys, let's debug this issue. There should also be one thing that we can put before uh, validating the password. We can say if there is no, we have to check, right? If it's a valid password, that's fine, but we have to check.
Line 45, there is a W, which is nowhere related to the code. Can
Yeah,
it be because
that could be the issue. So we can have one more condition. We can say if there is no valid user, then we should not even go to the password, right? So we can say status 404, that means user not found. And we can say user does not exist. So I think this is fine. Let's try that again. And yeah, we get 200. So login is successful. So whenever we do that, we get the login. If I try to pass a different, we get the error, that is user does not exist. And if we pass the wrong password, we get the invalid credentials part, right? So our registration and login APIs are working fine. Is this part clear to all?
Yes.
Okay, guys, any questions here?
Sahil, if possible, can you please show us how this all of this flow in the like network trace in Chrome?
Chrome we will see when we are working with the UI, right?
Okay.
Because now we are don't have any UI. Getting my point? So
Yeah.
how you make a request to that? So that is why the backend developers they use the tools like Postman, Bruno, all these things, right, to test it out. And then the APIs or the mock are hand over to the UI developers, and that's how that works.
Okay.
Okay, so one more thing we can do is we can go to our server. We can add a dot git ignore file. Inside this, we can say, okay, we will not push the node modules. So this is what that we will be pushing the code, right? So it will be ignoring that. And the second thing is all the env files. So we don't want to push any env files. Okay, so let's style it out. Yeah, I think env and node modules are not going. So can say git commit. Although the commit message should follow the company standards, guys, you can have the feed, core, all these things, right? You can read an article and do that, but just for our understanding what we have pushed, I'll push these changes. It has taken only the server for now. Yeah, that's fine. So have shared the code in the chat. Okay. So guys, any other questions here? So like start using this Postman or this Bruno is very lightweight, right? You saw that I just installed it in few seconds, right? Probably 2-3 minutes, and then we were able to use it out. Postman is also something you can use. Then there are again a lot of tools, right? So choose any one tool, use it for your testing, and this is how you can do that. And I think the API's creation is easy, right? It's just that the structure that we need to understand. So if I tell you what all we did, right? We created an entry point, we created a package.json, we created an entry point, and then we had installed some packages that we wanted to work with. So we use the Express to start the APIs, right, to launch a server. That server is running on the port that we have mentioned, and then we also did some MongoDB setup, right? So we went to the MongoDB Atlas, we created a cluster, we created a connection string, and that we have put inside .env, and that's what we are using. So do that, and then we have given a provision to register and log in the user from our app, right? So this APIs would be exposed. So this is the actual APIs that will pass on to the front end guys, right? Or will pass it to the UI. These are the endpoints. So we will use these endpoints from the UI. We will make a request and we will get the same response, right? So once we get the response, we will display them on the UI. So for now, we have the register user working that takes first name, last name, email, and password. And we have the login user working with some edge cases. You can also add more and more edge cases, but the important point is this edge cases, right? That we need to think about. For example, if the user is already not there, in this case it's not a valid user. If it's not a valid password, then try catch. So all these things are important, right, for proper error handling. Now in the backend we use observability tools and logging tools, right? So we are keeping things simple for now, and that's why we are putting console.logs, right, if we are getting the error. But yeah, you have to send a meaningful error to the user also, to the UI also, and you have to keep something for your logging as well, right, so that you know which part of the application has failed, right? So that is one thing. So any questions here? Okay, so no questions, guys. Pooja, Siddesh, Banner is saying go to user.js. User.js, where is that? With the model one. Okay, routes. This one. User model. Okay, so Benazir, in the user model, this pre is a middleware guy. Okay, you could have done this code directly inside the controller also. So we could have taken the password, we could have run the bcrypt here, and then we would have saved. But that was one way. The other way was, since every registration request would have to go, either you can write the code here or we can write in the model itself. So it will be kind of isolated with that model. So pre basically means it will always run before the save request happens. The save request happened when we said new user.save. So it will auto run this particular code. And why we are using this keyword is because this keyword will point to the schema. That's how we are getting this dot password. And this is just an extra condition that if the password is modified, only then we hash it, right? Otherwise, there is no point of hashing that. That's it. So it is just a syntax thing, but the idea is it's a middleware that will run before the save. Okay. And let's say if the password is new, user is registering, right? Then it will hash the password. That's it. If the password has not changed, then this will be false. So it will not hash again. And this normal function, that this will referring to that Mongo document. That's why we are using, that's why we are getting the password and everything, right? So it's a middleware that will execute automatically before the document is saved into the database. That's why we are saying pre-hook, right? Pre-save. Is it clear now? Benazir and others. Okay. So try this out. Try this out and let me know if you guys face any issues. Let's try to complete the other APIs by tomorrow. So we'll have to write a lot of code. Okay. So we'll test the backend side of things. Okay, so I've shared the code in the chat. So thanks, guys. I'll create a requirement document as well that will help us to understand what all APIs we require, the business logic, all those things, right? So I'll share the document and yeah, we'll continue with that. Okay, thanks, guys. Have a great day ahead. Let's meet tomorrow.